Hello, and welcome to the second in a series of 4 podcasts produced by Public Health Scotland and Suicide Prevention Scotland, exploring ways in which people working closely with distressing issues can keep themselves and colleagues safe and well. If you haven't already done so, I'd suggest starting at the beginning of the podcast series and working your way through. There are so many ways in which staff working in these areas are exposed to upsetting information that can at times feel overwhelming. With these podcasts, we'll hopefully give you information to help you look after yourselves and the people around you, to learn how to spend some time on nurturing and caring for yourself, and the things that you can do to maintain your well-being and to thrive in your role. My name is Janet Watson. I'm a counsellor, writer and former journalist, and I've worked closely with client trauma, as well as experiencing it myself. I've always been interested in what makes people tick, and have recently come to understand the importance of being my own client, and in keeping a weather eye on my own mental health. Exposure to difficult information, data and discussions in our work lives can become very normal, but it can chip away at our resilience if we let it. As I suggested in episode 1, take another pause to stop and think about your own personal experience of working with what we might call the difficult stuff. In your daily work life, you might hear details about death, suicide, addiction, mental illness, violence, rape or abuse. And this has become very normal for you. Again, I suggest that if you haven't already done so, you could get a notebook and jot down the things that are pretty routine for you, but might feel pretty shocking to the people you know who do different kinds of work. In this second episode, we'll be exploring good working habits and looking at the particular challenges we can face when remote or hybrid working. With the help of stress management expert Dr. Rebecca Williams, we'll look at how to support ourselves while supporting others and maintain a healthy work-life balance, something we often hear talked about, but what does it look like in practice? As in episode 1, I encourage you to listen for yourself, relax and try to put aside the needs of others while you reflect on what can work best for you. In short, I am encouraging you to put you first. Thinking that you can work with traumatized clients or with potentially very upsetting data or information for any length of time without being impacted in some way is like thinking that you can walk through a stream of water and not get your feet wet. In her excellent book, Help for the Helper, Babette Rothschild suggests a few exercises we can do to test out the power of the mirror neurons and somatic experiences we talked about in part 1. Just take a minute, if you can, to try one of these exercises now. Firstly, try turning down the corners of your mouth. And now feel what happens in your body. Most people report feeling a sense of heaviness and sadness in their guts and chests. Even though we might not be feeling sad right now, if we pull a facial expression associated with sadness, then that might be what we feel. Rothschild talks about emotional contagion among us human beings. Generally, when we smile at someone, they'll smile back. When someone near us yawns, we get an irresistible urge to yawn. I'm wanting to yawn now, even thinking about it, which is not easy when delivering a podcast. Can you then see why regular exposure to upsetting data or information about real people, or hearing stories of other people's trauma or lived experiences, may have an impact on our own emotions and well-being? Get into a good working habit of monitoring yourself. Develop your self-awareness in different situations and find ways of being supported, perhaps by peers, managers or supervisors. The final responsibility for knowing when we need to step back lies with ourselves. We need to know how much is too much. Once we've accepted that we need a break, how do we find that elusive self-care that is going to help us rest, recharge and build resilience back up? I put these questions to Dr. Rebecca Williams, a former GP who now runs her own stress management business, helping individuals and companies reduce the impact of stress. And she's also devised solutions that can help people reset and recharge. In our conversation, Rebecca shares some of her views on how we can be aware of and look after our well-being when we are working closely with difficult issues. Over the course of episode 1, Rebecca, it became apparent that self-care is particularly important for people in helping roles or who are working with difficult or upsetting information. I know that you work closely with people in stressful jobs to help them help themselves. So can you tell us a bit more about that, please?
Yes, certainly. And I suppose I should start with a little bit about my journey, because obviously that's been really integral to the work I do now and why I believe it's so important. I spent 25 years working as a GP, and it really struck me the number of people coming in with stress-related problems, not just mental health, but many physical health problems. And also health problems resulting from unhealthy ways of coping with stress, such as smoking, drinking too much alcohol, eating too much. All these sorts of things impact on health. So I set up my business, which is all about offering a proactive approach to stress. It's to help people become more self-aware and equip them with the tools to help them reduce the impact of stress. So yes, self-care is really important, and the first thing people need to do is become more self-aware before the self-care. And stress is a word that we use a lot.
Yes,
and
I know. Everybody's stressed.
Yes, and I hope you won't mind if I just take a few minutes here just to explain why it's such a problem. Ultimately, stress is what happens when the demands placed upon us exceed our ability to cope. But to understand why it's such a problem, we need to think about what is known as the acute stress response, or the fight-flight response. Now, this is an evolutionary adaptation to life-threatening situations, which is all about our survival. When we're in danger, the most primitive part of our brain recognizes that danger and generates a response. It activates the systems that we need. For example, our heart rate goes up and our muscles become stronger, but it suppresses the systems that we don't need and which are a drain on resources. For example, our gut, and very significantly, this front part of our brain known as the prefrontal cortex, and that is where our higher functioning occurs.
Okay.
So this is where we do our rational thinking. It's where we take in and process information. It's where we make decisions, solve problems, and control our emotions. So what does this mean for us when we're stressed over weeks and months? It means that our higher functioning is not working. So we struggle to think clearly, to make decisions, and all these things I've just mentioned, which clearly impacts on our ability to function and work. Secondly, we may develop health problems resulting from this complex stress response. And thirdly, we may end up using unhealthy ways of coping with stress. And all of this impacts on our functioning, which affects us, our relationships at home, it affects the workplace, our colleagues, and ultimately the business.
It's really interesting what you're talking about there, because I'm thinking about my own stress response. A couple of weeks ago, for example, I do obviously work in a client-facing role as a counsellor, but I know this can happen whether you're client-facing or whether you're not. But I came home just feeling really agitated. I didn't know what was wrong. I just felt like I had too much energy running around my body, but I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't really want to eat. I didn't really want to drink anything. I just was like bouncing off the walls in a way. And I guess when you talk about this response, this stress response, that is what was going on for me.
Yes, absolutely. And what did you end up doing to try and calm yourself?
I ended up watching mindless TV and going to bed.
And isn't that interesting? Because actually in that mode, you didn't want to eat. You didn't want to do the things that actually are very important in self-care. And that is the trouble. When we're in that place, it is all about survival. So and that's where we can end up working all hours. We don't have our lunch. We work in the evenings. We work weekends because everything's taking longer. We don't stop to think about why, but we just know it's taking longer, so we have to work longer. And then that exacerbates our stress response because obviously we're not looking after ourselves. We're not having downtime. So I always get concerned when people have fallen into that trap of working excessively long hours and sacrificing downtime because that means they're caught up in that stress response. So we have to help them reset. But you're right. Yes, it tends to lead to unhealthy ways of coping.
Now, we asked people attending the recent Suicide Prevention Scotland conference to tell us about things they've incorporated into their working life, which helps them with their well-being. Here's what they said.
So I work from home the vast majority of the time. Those who know me know that I'm not a Scottish native, so I live in Liverpool, but I work for an amazing Scottish charity. But working from home means that sometimes, if you're not careful, you could just be at your desk from 8:30 till 5, and then even all through the evening. So I've tried to really intentionally build in breaks during the day. Got some chickens the other week, and even just yesterday, I was having a really, really full-on morning, and instead of working through my lunch, I went and built a fence for the outside of the chickens area, and it was a really simple thing, but actually just having that hour outside doing something totally different to my day job was an incredible release, and actually meant that for the rest of the day I was just in a much better, more productive place.
So one of the things I do is I go to the gym, and that distresses me. Because at the end of the working day, even if it's been a very busy working day with lots of meetings, I will go out for a walk and then go because I live walking distance from my nearest gym, and I would go there, stay there for about 30 minutes and then come back home.
I work out at the gym quite often. I support men that live with dementia, and the gym is a gym buddy, and it is the most important part of my week is watching someone living with dementia, remembering who they are 3 times a week, and it's very important to me. I was 22 stone in 2020. I'm now physically fit at 50 years old, and it's the most important thing to me is physical fitness, movement for memory.
Regular breaks. I'm lucky enough to live near a park, so making sure that I make time in the day to get some fresh air, to get out, regardless of what the weather is, to take a breather, get away from the laptop, and even when I'm working in the office, make sure that I get some space outside for the day, and also make sure that I talk to people and I don't go an entire day without speaking to anyone. Make sure that you'll at least reach out to 1 or 2 people in the day to speak to them.
So thinking about people who are working with distressing data and upsetting information on a day-to-day basis, and thinking about the stress response, what would you say people might be able to do to help themselves? I mean, obviously, yes, you're talking about self-awareness and knowing what's going on, being aware of what's happening in our bodies, perhaps.
Yeah, I've created something called a stress self-check-in tool, and it revolves around asking ourselves 3 questions. So I would encourage them to take a little bit of time out, get a nice drink, and ask themselves the questions. First of all, is there anything that's making me feel stressed at the moment? What's making me feel stressed? And think about everything in their life, because of course we're not just doing our work, we are a person with a life, and often there's other things going on. So having a chance to ask ourselves that question is really important. And they may have with the space, they may have the opportunity to think about the work and think, actually, you know what, I am finding this quite hard. Secondly, do I have any unhealthy ways of coping with my stress? So that's a chance to think about, for me, eating too much chocolate, or other people drinking too much, all the things I've mentioned already. And then thirdly is, am I getting any symptoms of stress? And again, this is part of self-awareness, is recognizing our marker symptoms. And when I do workshops and webinars, people are always amazed at all the different physical symptoms that people can have because of stress. And I must emphasize that some of these symptoms can have other causes which are serious, so may need discussion with a doctor, but they vary from different kinds of headaches, migraines, tension, pressure headaches, to various chest symptoms, pain in the jaw caused by clenching of the teeth. You can get irritable bowel syndrome, very common abdominal problems, all sorts of other symptoms. So actually being tuned in, and I had one client who said to me, tension in my left calf is my marker symptom. And when he felt that, he knew he had to reset himself. So it's being aware, it's recognizing your symptoms. So asking those 3 questions is a good way to help people just assess themselves.
When you're talking there, I'm thinking immediately about how when I'm focusing on something that's being told to me, or I'm reading something, I'm not aware of what my body's doing. So I come to the end of an hour when I'm in a meeting, or an hour when I'm with a client, and I suddenly relax and I feel cold because I haven't moved very much. I maybe feel hungry then and thirsty, but I haven't felt that while I've been in the session. And it's that, isn't it? It's like thinking about how I'm holding myself. What's going on? Why am I clenching this? What am I doing here? And that just doesn't enter my head during the previous hour at all.
No, that's so interesting, and it often doesn't unless we consciously tune into it. I remember when I was struggling once with upper back and shoulder issues, and I'd seen a physio guy, and he said, just be aware of where your shoulders are through the day. And it was amazing how often they were halfway to my ears.
Up there.
Yeah, and I literally had to consciously relax. I'll just give you a couple of useful tools, which is the grounding tools. Now these, I'm just thinking of those because breathing is one of them, and that is such paramount importance. When in the acute stress response, an increased breathing rate is part of our survival mechanism. Obviously, if we need to run or fight, we have to breathe fast. So it's no surprise that when we're stressed and anxious, breathing is very often a problem. We maybe not notice it, but we're often breathing faster and more shallow. That contributes to tension around the neck and shoulder area, and also just a feeling lightheaded and not feeling so good. So breathing is a really important tool, is learning how to breathe calmly and slowly. So diaphragmatic breathing is really good. The diaphragm is a sheet of muscle between the chest and the abdomen. And when we breathe in, the diaphragm moves down. And then as we breathe out, it comes back up. And that movement of the diaphragm actually triggers a nerve impulse to the heart to slow it down. So I would encourage your listeners to look on YouTube how to do diaphragmatic breathing. It's best learnt lying flat and put your hand between your ribs and your belly button.
So you can feel where
and
you're moving up.
Exactly. And you should be able to see your hand rise up as you breathe in and come down as you breathe out. And then if you can combine that with box breathing, which is breathing in for 3, hold for 3, out for 3, hold for 3, or with 6-8, in for 6, out for 8. That gives people a way of calming themselves down when they're feeling tense. So it may be even after every meeting, you just get into the habit of doing a few diaphragmatic breaths, or after every hour at the screen, you get up, walk around and do some breaths. But also particularly if you're feeling anxious, angry, emotional, any of those emotions, then doing the breathing can help you feel calmer. And what it does is it gets your rational brain back in gear.
Clicks back in. Thank goodness for that.
And the other really good grounding tool is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 mindful tool, where you literally say out loud or to yourself 5 things I can see, and you name them. Glass, mug, phone, glasses, biscuits. 4 things I can touch or feel. 3 things I can hear. 2 I can smell. 1 I can taste. And often you don't need to go through all of them. By the time you've done the first few, you find you're calmer. So yes, when we're in our primitive brain, it's a horrible place to be. And if we can have the tools to help us get back into our rational brain, it just changes our perspective. We can think clearly and we're back on track.
So all those things are 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It just brings you back into your body and into the room.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're not up here in your head. You're not out there somewhere fighting off whoever you're fighting off. You're back in the room with your biscuits, which is where I like to be honest.
Yeah, me too.
As we're hearing, we're often so good at helping and advising other people around managing their well-being, and not so good at looking after ourselves. So we asked some of the people attending the recent Suicide Prevention Scotland conference what advice they might give to someone who was coming in to take over their role.
I think the one piece of advice I would give is to protect time for yourself, and sometimes you just need to be able to take a step back. For me, it's really helpful to speak to peers, and the rest of the suicide prevention leads have been really good, and I think protecting time to go to that regular meeting is really helpful.
To be themselves. There's a lot of imposter syndrome in academia, and a lot of people that are kind of like think that they have to try and present themselves in a certain way or to be perfect, and that kind of perfectionism, can really drive a lot of insecurity. And I think that it's really important that people are really, as much as possible, bring their authentic self, to the situation, and that they do feel that they can be honest and open about how they're feeling and how the work is affecting them.
Take time for yourself, I think, in terms of reflect on what you're doing, and just kind of give yourself enough time to kind of reflect on what you're doing.
Look at your own self-care. If you're not looking after your own physical and mental well-being, then it's going to put barriers to successfully look after the people who you work with and the communities that you serve.
Rely on your team. the relationships you've got with the closest people doing the job with you, make those relationships, work with them, have trusted people. That would be the key thing.
Thinking particularly about people who are, working remotely and working on their own, I know you've done a lot of work with organisations for managers to really think about what it's like for people and, perhaps how people who are working on their own or working in a hybrid way, how they can have opportunities to debrief or perhaps, have additional training and supervision to make sure that they're feeling seen. I guess that's the word, isn't it? Are people feeling seen in their organisations?
Yes, exactly. Are they feeling seen, or are they just in the middle of nowhere in their room on a computer doing the thing and not feeling a part of anything? Yes, I think it's a really interesting question and something that needs thought. We can't just send people home to work and let them get on with it and just check they've got the right desk height and the right chairs. We've got to think about what we'll talk about later, which is psychological safety and feeling a part of the team.
Absolutely.
So I think managers can be creative, but I suppose it's about having ways in which the team can meet, and even if it is online, having a way that they can have a regular meeting to catch up as people, not just as someone doing a particular job, but as people.
As real people.
As real people who can talk about just normal things. It should just be a coffee and a chat kind of meeting.
Yeah.
As well as managers, I think, possibly do need to have more one-to-ones with individual members of their team.
Yeah.
So that they get to know their members of the team and the team members feel safe with their manager. And this is really important because as a GP, I've had such variation in my patients who've been signed off. I've had someone who really probably needed to be signed off, but who said to me, please don't sign me off. I've told my manager what's going on. They're completely on board. They've reduced my workload. They're really keen to try and support me in the workplace. That is a brilliant relationship.
Yeah, yeah.
I've had others who've said, right, I've been sent home and I'm not allowed to come back into work until I'm 100% better, with no support, no nothing. I've had people off who said, my manager's phoning me every week to check how I am and they're being really supportive. Others who've said, my manager's phoning every week, chivvying me to go back to work. Now, I don't know how much of what I'm hearing is their perception because of the relationship, or it is actually the reality, but it just highlights the difference that a good manager-team member relationship can make to keeping someone at work when they're struggling and getting them back.
It's the difference, isn't it, between feeling as though struggling is a burden and feeling as though struggling is okay. Yeah, of course. You know, every so often we all struggle.
Yes.
So how can we work together to make sure you feel supported and able to do the job that you're doing?
That's right.
Yeah.
And that relies upon the manager feeling in an okay place, doesn't it? And feeling comfortable talking about these things.
What do you do when your manager's stressed? I mean, I've had situations where, I've not wanted to go to somebody with a problem because I can see them struggling under their own burdens of stress. I mean, that's really hard.
It's really hard, isn't it, that? Yes, and exactly. If they're in their stress response bit of brain, you're not going to get someone who's calm and controlled and rational, are you? You're going to get someone who snaps and who's irritable. So why would you go and talk to them? So again, for managers, learning to manage their emotions and their stress response is really important. And I've talked to you about the grounding tools, but actually more importantly is how do we build resilience on a day-to-day basis?
I love that word, resilience.
I know, it's great.
Such a great word.
So, that the grounding tools are to bring you from the steaming kettle back to the not quite boiled kettle. That's what that does. But actually getting the heat of the water down, so it's near the bottom, is all about how we look after ourselves on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And that's the things like, as an individual, making sure you're getting a good night's sleep, that you're eating healthily, you're not eating on the hoof, you're taking the time to eat and healthily possible, drinking plenty of water, and minimising the unhealthy things I alluded to earlier. Also trying to get some exercise, especially movement. If you're working at a screen, get up regularly and walk around, but also exercise, something that you enjoy, that obviously is good for your cardiovascular health.
Absolutely.
And also doing things that you enjoy. These should not be crossed off as the bottom of the list, not important. They are vitally important, because doing things you enjoy, whether it's spending time with family, engaging in hobbies, going for walks or whatever it is, these are the things that release the happy chemicals in your brain and your body. They recharge you, they rest you, they are so important for your well-being.
One of the things I've done recently is I've downloaded the app called Merlin, and it's brilliant because you can walk around and you can hear birds singing, and it tells you exactly what birds there are.
Yeah.
It's really helping me.
Yeah.
I can't possibly feel stressed when I'm thinking, what's that noise? It's beautiful, and it's actually a chiff-chaff.
Isn't that amazing?
I know.
How funny you should mention that. My mum just mentioned that the other day, and I hadn't even heard the word before.
So I think it's really interesting what you've just been saying. I think one of the things as well is when we are feeling stressed, and I know this has been my experience, I don't actually know what helps me. I don't know what I like. That idea of your brain not being properly engaged. But things that have been proven to protect against things like compassion, fatigue and burnout when you're at work are really simple. Companionship, rest, reasonable hours, holidays. These are all things that should be normal and natural part of life, but can become unattainable in lots of ways.
You're so right. And that is because, again, I'm afraid it comes down to the stress response. When we get into that place, we're all about survival. We're all about just getting through. That's what life becomes, getting through. And we sacrifice the investment. And resilience is all about the investment in ourselves. And that requires, I think, stopping and thinking. And that's why I like my stress self-check-in tool, because it's a chance for people to actually stop and think and ask the questions. And I talk about a slight change of subject here, but I just reminded me of something. When I talked about the unhealthy ways of coping with stress, something I talk to my clients about is simple joys. So I've alluded to doing things we enjoy. That's good.
Yeah.
But I always ask people, what are your simple joys? Now, these are the little things you can do in a few minutes that give you a buzz, that don't cause you any harm. And so rather than reaching for the glass of wine or the bit of chocolate or whatever it is, just reach for your simple joy and do it for a few minutes. And you can do it also as a reward if you're doing difficult work. You can have a little break and do your simple joy, or you can do it as something, as a treat at the end of the day, but certainly to avoid unhealthy ways of coping. And so examples, it would include for you, just sitting in the garden with your app, listening to the birds. Sometimes just watering houseplants, doing a bit of gardening, playing a musical instrument, these things. I would ask listeners to ask themselves, what are my simple joys, and incorporate them into your day.
I'm thinking about my simple joy, definitely not the musical instrument or those discordant notes. It'd be very bad for me. But I have noticed that I just really love to tune in with the dog. And
that's a very good point, actually. Pets are wonderful.
Yeah.
I realise we're running out of time, and I know I've talked a lot, but I do just want to bring up this one thing,
Go on.
Which is my idea of a debrief session.
Yeah.
This is really important because a lot of people with work, especially if working from home, the boundaries between work and home can become very blurred, and it become all too easy just to keep popping in back onto your computer and doing things. So the idea of the debrief session is you say to yourself, right, what time am I going to finish my working day? And then you add on half an hour, and that is your debrief time.
Okay.
But what you do first of all is you reflect on your day and what has gone well. I think it's really important that we reflect on things that have gone well.
Yeah.
Secondly, you reflect on things that maybe need a bit more thought. So maybe a comment or something discussed in a meeting that you want a bit of time to think about. And thirdly, you make a list of any outstanding jobs that need doing.
Yeah.
And once you've done that, that's your day officially ended, your working day.
Yeah.
It's important that you close your computer down, you walk out of your study, or if you're working in the house, that you pack everything away. So in your head, you're back now in your home space.
Yeah.
And it's particularly hard for people who work from home and aren't commuting, because often the commute is a natural break.
Yeah.
And then if thoughts of work do come back, if you've remembered something you need to remember, then email it to yourself and then you can forget about it.
Yeah.
If it's worrying about work, then you need to manage those thoughts. And I know we haven't got much time, but I would recommend things like a catchphrase: stop it, not now, let it go, whatever it is, something commanding that you say to your brain.
Yeah.
And then distract yourself with something you enjoy.
Yeah, that's such a good idea for the end of the day when you're working on your own. Yeah.
And just one more tool. I know I'm so sorry, but which alludes to what you were talking about, my acronym STAN, I think is really important if you're struggling and life is hard and you're just aware that life's getting you down. S is for two things. First of all, for self-care, but also spend time with people who make you feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
The last thing you need is to be with people who moan at you, offload all their problems, or criticize or judge you. So be selective about who you're spending time with.
Absolutely.
tea, talk to somebody. I think all of us know the importance of offloading.
Speaking to someone.
A, ask for help. If you need help, ask for help. And N is no, is about boundaries.
Oh, I like that.
It's feeling able to say, no, you know what, I can't be that support friend for you right now because I've got my own stuff going on. Or no, if you want me to do that, then I can't do this. Which do you want me to do? Having the confidence to do your boundaries. And also the debrief session actually comes nicely into that, your own personal boundaries. So yes, I'm sorry, that's a lot of...
No, that's absolutely fine. I really love the idea of the debrief and just getting everything out of your brain onto the screen or onto your phone or onto a piece of paper if you're old school like me, and then you can just go and sleep. Yes,
because you've cleared it all away.
You've cleared it all away. You know it's safe until tomorrow. Thanks ever so much, Rebecca. That's been great.
Thank you.
Having listened to my conversation with Rebecca, I wonder if you can pause and take a few minutes to really think about what and who nourishes you in your life. What do you like? What don't you like? What difference does it make when you really take care of yourself? Was there a time in your life when you didn't care for yourself properly, and what happened to you and the people closest to you? There is, of course, a responsibility for line managers and organisations to ensure that staff wellbeing is prioritised, and we'll look more at that in the next episode. For now, though, it feels important that we have a deeper understanding and awareness of what work-life balance actually means for us personally, and how we can shift things around a bit and help ourselves when we feel those symptoms of compassion fatigue creeping up on us. I want to thank my guest in today's podcast, Rebecca, for taking the time to share her experiences to help us all learn and better understand the impact of the work we do and how we can be kind to and look after ourselves. Thank you so much for listening and taking the time to focus on you, and see you in episode 3. Thanks for listening to this podcast from Public Health Scotland and Suicide Prevention Scotland. Views or statements shared do not imply formal endorsement or promotion of any specific approach, service, or model. The guests in this episode have shared insight from their practice and experiences. This podcast is not intended to provide clinical guidance or professional advice.